Oy, ay, da, da, da.
Okay, so we are we'll just go back 2 lines. So we have the line begins Shenikra Ein Soif, about a third from the top on Beis Beis. So he asked the question, why is it called Ein Soif, not Ein L'Tchila? Well, Ein L'Tchila is a higher reference than Ein Soif. The whole kadmon nitzchi v'loy kol nitzchi kadmon. That we discussed already yesterday. So he says a kadmon is by definition a nitzchi. Again, kadmon means original, pristine, something that preceded all and nothing preceded him. That's called kadmon. Nitzchi means eternal, that persists indefinitely. So Ein Soif is implying nitzchiyus, not kadmonius. But it says, "Kol kadmon nitzchi, kol nitzchi kadmon." In other words, kadmon is a quality that is superior to the reference of nitzchi. A nitzchi could be a nitzchi, but it's not a kadmon. Where do we see? On what basis are we saying that loy kol nitzchi kadmon? It would seem to us that nitzchi and kadmon go together. What would be a nitzchi? What would be eternal? Only something that is inherent that is true in and of itself. So you would be able automatically a kadmon. So he says not necessarily. Because Shagam ben Nivroim yesh inyan hanitzchiyus. Because by Nivroim also there is the inyan, there is the principle of nitzchiyus. Where do we see this? Shekayomim beyish ubemin. That Nivroim have an inyan of nitzchiyus, but we see that there are Nivroim that kayomim beyish, that persist in their presence, in their existence. Beyish, on the individual level, or ubemin, that they persist in their existence on the species level. Hagam shehem havim v'nivroim, that although that they are havim, they come into existence. Havim means they come into being. V'nivroim, and their creations. B'meila heim nifsodim mitzad atzmom, and therefore, b'meila means it follows logically, and it follows also inherently that if it's a heva v'nivro, then b'meila heim nifsodim mitzad atzmom. Then in and of themselves they should have the element of nifsod, of dissipation.
We're talking about the creation who dissipates?
Anything that's created
Can dissipate.
has to have the element, naturally has the element of dissipation. That's called heva v'nifsod. Heva v'nifsod. Anything that's heva v'nivro has to have the automatical union of hefsed. Mitzad atzmo. Okay, this is the union that we have to stepping a little bit deeper into it. ומכל מקום, and yet still, כיום המה ברוצן הבורא. They persist in their kiyum, in their existence, in their presence, ברוצן הבורא, by the will of the Creator. So let us understand, in principle, the inyan of a nivra. Kol nivra has to have the element of nifsodim, of nifsod.
Nifsad is dissipation.
Nifsod means dissipation, gets lost.
You mean temporariness?
Mm-hmm.
Nifsod. Why does it have to have the inyan of nifsod? Mitzad atzma. So we have to follow this. This is both logical, but I'd like we should understand it from an inception perspective. Since that this is something which is hoiva, which came into being, which means that the basis and the platform, so to speak, where it came into being, does not have that element. The platform that's there before this came into being, and that provides the possibility for that being to be. But in being itself is not there, which means that what is the difference between before and after? Before the being came into being and after it came into being? Before the being, that being came into being, there is, so to speak, the fundamental presence, the way the reality is. The being came, this is an additional action. It requires a special action to bring this out that this should be. Now, an action is not unlimited. An action, as the Alter Rebbe explains, anything that came into being as a result of an act has to be reenacted. Because action is like we say over here, the Rotze B'Shuva. Action is a constant, has to be constantly rejuvenated. It doesn't have a steadiness. Thus we have a nivra. In other words, this nivra, this being that it should be here, is in a sense has to substantiate existence all the time, because in essence it's not there. And to substantiate it has to be substantiated. But mitzad atzmoi, in other words, in and of itself, it is heber v'nifsad. I'll come back to this. I want to show the contrast between mitzad atzmoi, mikol mokoim, kayomim heima berotzon habayim. What is mitzad atzmoi, and what is berotzon habayim? Okay. Mitzad atzmoi means that in its presence, its state of being as it is, it already has a definition. It has a function, an identity. All of these qualities that it has, these definitions, and it has a presence, and it has been designed, and has been accepted, all of that does not compel that existence to continue to be. There's nothing compelling about it. For example, we'll take a very simple example, even though it's kind of oversimplicity, but the point will be brought across. Cars exist now approximately 100 years. There's no similarity between the car that rides on the street today and the car that drove 100 years ago. That was a car and this is a car. Because the design of the car as it is even today, there's nothing compelling about it. It should continue to be this way. It's convenient, it's nice, but next year there could be a completely different design. There's nothing compelling, no nitzchiyus in that particular design, even though it works. And conceivably, that's it for this year. For 1 year in America, that's the way it is. Every year is a new design. Why? Because the design itself does not have a nitzchiyus element. It's just an action. On the temporary moment, this is the way it appears to fit. The next moment, it could be a completely different fit. This is pshat that they have him nifsodim mitzad atzmom. You have to understand what that means. So that's what means they do not have a compelling presence, even though they work perfectly well. Everything that we observe, everything that we designed, it's beautiful, it's fine, but there's nothing you say, oh, this is the perfect design, this is the end of all design. There's no such thing.
I'm saying nifsadim, I mean, like every single moment, or nifsadim that somehow because it's...
Sorry?
You're saying nifsadim, you mean
all
like,
the time.
I mean every single moment.
Every single moment.
Like, okay.
Every single moment. Again, take a simple oversimplification. Again, going back to American psyche, right? A lady goes and designs her home. She changes everything, the drapes and the chairs, everything's changed. As soon as it's set up, she immediately thinks, what can be the next design? What's wrong with this? Nothing's wrong. But, the minute it's in, I get tired of it. It's the beginning of getting tired of it. Why? Because there's no such thing as a perfect design. Anything that's heiva is nifsa. So that's why.
What's the touch of heiva?
What?
What's the touch of Hoiva?
What is the
Heiva means it's a presence that came into being. It's there because it was made to be, not because it is inherently there. That's meant Heiva. Just like we have, as we have in time, we have Over, Hoive, Veyosid. Hoive is a temporary state between Over and Osid. Okay, so this is the principle of Hoive. But Mikol Mokoim, Kayomim Heimo Berotzen Habeir. What is this? What does this allude to? Again, let us go to our, as I said, to our simplistic analysis of a car. As we always say, that a car per se is something that actually represents a human quality, a rotzen of the human being, something that has, in human terms, indefinite significance. So yes, indeed, the actual design of the car has been changed hundreds of times. But the fact that there is a car, that persists indefinitely. Now, that too is a Heiva v'nifsa. because that came into being. But that being has a completely different level of persistence than the design. And here is where we have to kind of treat on soft ground.
Yes, Hoive v'nifza.
Huh?
Hoive v'nifza.
It exists and it dissipates.
Okay.
A human being per se, the human presence in the world is also a creation. And the whole spirit of the human being is a created thing. So even though we pointed out that the human spirit is much more persistent than the design, the means by which it is executed, like the design of the car and so forth. The spirit persists. But in truth, yes, the spirit is much more fundamental, much more true than the design. But that spirit is also creation. There is nothing compelling about the human being. It's a godly creation. As you know, a human being was created in the world at some point in time. They was created and that principle that has to be a human being in the world is something mitzad atzmai. Here's where I said we have to treat on a soft ground. Mitzad atzmai, in and of itself, there is nothing compelling about the human being that in the world, once he's there, it has to be. It cannot dissipate. But kayomim heima berotzen haboire. This is a phenomenal point. This, the truth of the human being. We always say that human being, he's completed the creation of the world. The truth of the human being does not consist in his own in his own contribution. In other words, in his own presence. That he is such a presence that cannot dissipate. His presence can dissipate. But that which we see in the human being, that he has got such enormous significance that it goes together, just as the world cannot be destroyed, so too the human being cannot dissipate. Like we say, Ayin, Jewish people are eternal. Just as the world cannot be destroyed, then so too the Jewish people cannot be destroyed. That is not mitzad atzmo. That is not representative of their own being. It's representative of the rotzen haboire that brought them into existence in the first place. Because in other words, this is not their own presence. This is the rotzen haboire that they represent. So, and this rotzen haboire, this really in truth defines their existence. Again, let us take another example, which will allow us to focus in on these terms, these words. We speak about the clock on the wall. There are several aspects involved in there. There's a wall, there's a clock. There's a clock on the wall, the way the clock was attached to the wall. All of these things are Heva v'Nifsa. The clock can be attached to the wall in many different ways. The clock can be designed in many different ways. The wall can be, there's all Heva v'Nifsa. There's nothing compelling about that particular state at all. One thing is compelling, that this is a human dwelling, and therefore there's going to be a clock in the wall. Not this clock, not this wall, but the essence itself, the rotzin, of the human will, the human spirit that says there has to be a clock on the wall, that persists indefinitely. As a result of that, the clock itself will also be on the wall indefinitely. What do you see in the clock that makes it exist on a continuous basis? The physical clock? No. The wall? No. The nail that holds it up? No. It's this human spirit that holds it up. So what is the real sense, what is the real spirit of this clock on the wall? It is the human spirit that put it up, that says that it belongs there. So let's understand, this human spirit, it's true, it's a human spirit, but this human spirit has now been vested in the clock on the wall. The clock on the wall represents that spirit. That is its creation. Therefore, this creation has a nitzchius. Represents a nitzchius element, relatively speaking.
What's that last piece? There's an eternal element in that setup.
That's right, because what does it really represent? What is it? What kind of this creation is the actualization of that spirit, and therefore it has a nitzchius. It has a nitzchius.
But yet every creation is not an actualization of that spirit.
No, every creation. That's what he says. Kayam heim berotzen habeirei. When we look at the world, we're saying the world cannot dissipate. The world, of course, can dissipate. But what we see in the world is a rotzen habeirei, because the world represents a rotzen habeirei, a divine spirit, a divine will that it should be a divine will that it should be a world. That is what the world stands for. These are not these inseparable entities, elements. Just as in our existential, the clock and the wall and the human spirit that put it there are not separable. That's what it represents. You have to be blind. In other words, that's what I always point out. The human being sees the spirit, the animal sees the tangible. The spirit, that is really the reality of the creation. Now, we always point out, you come to a chasana hall, again, the proverbial cat will see the tables and the chairs and the food, and the human being will see a simcha. Which is a complete reality on a totally different level. So this is, in other words, Yesh Bohem, Kayom Heim Berotzen HaBoirei. I want that we should understand. Kayom Heim Berotzen HaBoirei does not mean to say, yes, they dissipate, but the Rebbe recreates it all the time. So then there's no nitzchius. Something that is recreated all the time is not nitzchi. Every time it gets created for the moment, and then created again for the moment, there's no nitzchius. You say that, no, there is nitzchius. because to start with, what they represent is the Ratzon HaBeis. And this is why they get recreated. Like we always point out, if the car breaks, what happens? You go and buy another car, or you fix this car. Why? Because the car broke. That's the Heva V'Nifsad. The spirit did not break. That created in the first place, that is there still. And the same, this is brought to light by the example that we always speak about, that if a person has a cut on his finger, so the physical finger has been cut. Because it's a Heba Ben Yipsad, it can be cut. But the highest that's in there is not cut, and that's why it heals and leaves no mark. Because the highest, the reality is still there. It's Kayim Load. He has a Nitzchius. These are the highest on Nefesh. And these are not two separate things, because that's what the finger represents in the first place, the highest on Nefesh. And this is the pshat that loikol nitzchi kadmon. It could be something that is heva v'nivro, and therefore mitzad atzma he is a nifsod, and yet he has the element of nitzchius. Okay. Now we can continue as much time we have, then we'll pick it up. Kol and v'gam nivroim shalamato, and even nivroim, all the creations he below on our earth, yesh loimar, it's conceivable shalule hached be'etz hadas, that for were it not for the chet etz hadas, ho yu gam kin kayomim b'ish, they would also persist as individual, as the very same that were created, even though in fact the way things are now, Kayomim Be'ish is only in Ivroim Shalamayim, that the sun and the moon, the Tzvah HaShamayim, but Tzvah HaOretz is not Kayomim Be'ish, Tzvah HaOretz is Kayomim Min. Everything on the earth, all the species persist, but not the individual, the very same that was created originally, but the species. But that, the Rebbe says, it's conceivable that it's all due to Eitz Hadas. But if not for the Eitz Hadas, then they would persist as individual, as the very same that were created in the first day, in the first at creation time. Why? Because B'Rotzon HaBeis, they have a nitzchius. The fact that they have a nitzchius b'min shows that there is that the Mitzad Rotzon HaBeis they have a nitzchius. I'm sorry? Yeah.
We learn that the Eitz Chaim is the nitzchius that they would have gotten had they eaten from it.
No, that's after Eitz Hadas.
Yes.
But if not for Eitz Hadas, they didn't have to eat Eitz Chaim. The initial creation would have given the subsistence forever. So therefore, it could be a nivra, and as the Rebbe points out at the end, even nivra hi lamato. In essence, initially, he's a nivra, and mitzadatzma, as a nivra mitzadatzma, he has to have the inyan for hafsedus, because he has a finite design, a finite significance. Nevertheless, mitzad Rotzon HaBeis, he is nitzchi. So it's possible that he is not a kadmon and yet nitzchi. But v'chol kadmon harehu nitzchi. But something that's a kadmon is by definition nitzchi. Therefore, we're pointing out that Kadmon, the term Kadmon, is a superior reference to Ein Sof, to Nitzchi. So therefore, and this brings out the question, okay, let's finish. Why is the oil not called Ein Loi Tchila? Instead we call it Ein Loi Sof. Oil Ein Sof, not Ein Loi Tchila. This is it for this morning. Have a good day. Call to.
Da 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 da. Ay yo yo yo.